So good morning, students. So this is a lecture on transportation documentation, both from domestic point of view as well as from international point of view. So in the previous lecture, we studied something on transportation planning, their importance, their meaning, their scope, etc. And this lecture will take you to the transportation documentation from domestic and international level. So as a prerequisite to today's lecture, so we should know what is transportation planning, the documentary collection process, and the bill of exchange. So we all might have come across that when the items are transported either domestically or internationally, the delivery must be accompanied by the relevant documentation. So the amount of documentation will vary depending on if the shipment is within the country or to another country. So that is also is a prerequisite knowledge in moving forward. So once we acquire the prerequisite knowledge in the form of documentation process, in the form of transportation planning, in the form of the bill of exchange, we move on to the objectives of today's class, which is all about on the three fundamental agenda. The number one agenda of today's lecture will be on the documentation process that is carried out in different modes of transport. The number two agenda will be the documentation process required in land, air, sea, and in combined mode, where I'll combine few of these different modes, and I'll tell you something on the documentation part, both from domestic point of view as well as international point of view, and other documents related to transport of goods and services. So these are some of the objectives of today's lecture on transportation documentation. So, when items are transported either domestically or internationally, the delivery must be accompanied by some relevant documentation. The amount of documentation varies depending on if the shipment is carried within India or to another country like US. So as far as interstate transportation of goods in the country is concerned, there are three documents that are of the greatest importance. The number one is the bill of lading, number two is the freight bill, and the number three is free onboard terms of sale, which we call it as FOB, free onboard. So instructions, a documentary collection, that is instruction from an exporter to a remitting bank to collect the payment immediately or at a future date from an importer against the delivery of the relevant commercial documents. So all the documents that endorse the goods, mainly payment documents, insurance documents, and the transportation documents. And we'll follow, or we'll focus on the transportation documents. So before focusing on the transportation documents, so the three important documents that are of greatest importance, as I told you, was the bill of lading, the freight bill, and the free onboard terms of sale. So let us quickly move on to each one of them in a lighter note. So bill of lading is the most important document that is used in transporting the goods. So the legal definition of a bill of lading is a contract for the carriage of goods and a documentation and the document of title to them. So it is going to provide any and all information that the carrier will need to transport the items. It will contain the shipment origin and the contract terms for the transportation, and it is required by a carrier before the shipment is taken. The bill of lading should definitely include the name and address of the consigner and consignee as well. And often it will have the routing instructions for the carrier. It will contain a description of the goods to be transported, the quantity for each of the commodities, and the commodity class and rate. So the bill of lading will contain the terms of contract for the movement of goods by a common carrier. This is the contract between the shipper and the carrier to transport the goods on the bill of lading to the consignee. The bill of lading contract has nine terms. So the first term is common carrier liability. Number two is delay in transit. Number three is freight not accepted. Number four is extraordinary value. Number five is explosives. Number six is a recourse. Number seven is substitute bill of lading. Number eight, alterations, and number nine, claims. Next, we move on to the freight bill. So freight bill is the carrier's invoice to the shipper for all the charges that the carrier has incurred. The carrier's freight bill will include the details of the shipment, the items being shipped, the consignee, the origin, the destination, as well as total weight and total charges. Number three, we move on to the FOB. That is by FOB, I mean to say the free onboard terms of sale, that is FOB. So FOB, free onboard terms of sale documents, which party will be liable for the transportation cost, which party is in control of the movement of the goods, and when the title passes to the buyer. So if the FOB terms of sale indicate that it is FOB delivered, then this implies that the shipper will be responsible for all the carrier's cost. If the terms of sale show FOB origin, then this means that the buyer will take the title of the goods when they are shipped, and they will incur at the transportation cost. So it is telling you the process of documentary collection right from the contract of sale to the exporter, the documents, the exporter's bank will carry the documents to the issuing bank, then those documents will go to the importer. So this is how the movement of documents will take place from the exporter to the importer or vice versa. So now coming to the what is a transport document? So part of a documentary collection is known as a transport document. So it's a contract evidence of the acceptance of goods. You also have a receipt of goods and document of title. So these are the three important contract evidence that we should have. That is acceptance of goods, receipt of goods, and document of title. So this slide will tell you in detail about the different transport documents that are required for different modes of transport, which was one of the agenda of today's class. If you remember the objectives of today's lecture. So transport documents is broadly categorized into four different types, right from sea, ocean, air, land, and combination. If we talk about sea or ocean, the transport documents will include mate's receipt, charter party, maritime bill of lading. And if we look at the air mode of transport, then the transport documents will have two things, that is air consignment note or airway bill and the charter party. If we go to the land, it may be a road transport or a railway transport. So we will have railway consignment note or railway bill, or we may have, if it is a road transport, then we'll have a road consignment note or roadway bill. And if it happens to be a combination of any one of these two, then it will have a combined transport document or a multi-modal bill of lading. So this transport documents slide is very important for all of you to remember, considering the fact that we are going through the transportation documents in international mode as well as in domestic transport mode. So this four ways of transport, that is sea, air, land, and combined, and all their transportation documents required are mentioned in this slide. So coming to the sea ocean mode of transport, and one of the important document that was required is the mate's receipt. So it is a document which is signed by an officer of a vessel, evidencing the receipt of a shipment on board the vessel. So interim measure until a proper bill of lading can be issued. So you can see a mate's receipt. I've taken a photograph of the mate's receipt and I've pasted over here for you to understand how a mate's receipt looks like. So it is a document which is signed by an officer of a vessel, evidencing the receipt of the shipment on board the vessel. Next, we have the charter part, which is hire or lease contract between the owner of a vessel and the hirer or lessee. Lessee in the sense charterer. Next, maritime bill of lading. It is issued by a carrier or its agent, and it will serve as a receipt for goods. It is a receipt for goods. It is a proof or a testimony for the receipt of goods, and also it is the evidence of the contract of carriage. So document of title of the goods. So now if we go on to the airway mode of transport, the airway bill serves as the transportation documentation in that part. So the it serves as the receipt of goods by an airline who is generally a carrier, and the contract of carriage, that is shipper and carrier. So this is an international airway bill provided by the FedEx Express, and you can see that it is containing all such details, and this is how an airway bill looks like. And this is an important documentation when we are talking about the airway mode of transporting goods or services. In the land transport is all about the roadway transport, in which the roadway bill is the transport document, and it is a CMR standardized document for cross-border transport of cargo by road, which may happen by truck, based on UN recommendations for uniform international rules and enforced in the European Union. Receipt for goods, evidence of the contract of carriage, and this is how a roadway bill looks like, which you can take a look at the right side of the PPT here. It's a roadway bill, and this document is very much required for transporting the cargo by roads, which may happen by the help of a truck. So next is the multimodal bill of lading. That is when goods are transported using more than one mode of transport. It may be by air, sea, or air and sea and air, or air and road, or whatever. That is more than one mode of transport we are using. And when we are transporting the goods using more than one mode of transport, that is called as multimodal. So in that case, the issuer and the collection takes the responsibility for the whole of the journey through a combined transport documentation. Okay, so this is a draft copy, as you can see, for the multimodal bill of lading when we talk about more than one mode of transport. So both the issuer of the collection will take the responsibility for the whole of the journey through a combined transport document, which you see on the right side here. So apart from the different documents that we talked on till now, so there are other documents that may be of importance whenever we are talking about the transport documents. So the other documents include basically two things. One is the custom documents, and the other one is documents related to the goods. So in custom documents, we may be asked to produce a single customs declaration, SCD, import license, consular invoice, etc. And in documents related to the goods, we should have the certificate of origin. Generally, we call it as CO or COO, dangerous goods declaration, certificate of quality, health and sanitary certificates, packing list. So in case we are transporting some dangerous items, in the sense some chemicals or something, so we must have the dangerous goods declaration, that these goods are not are meant for certain purposes, like for research purposes, or because we generally import some chemicals from outside, and we need to have those chemicals certification, in the sense that these are meant for research purposes or some specific purposes, and these are not intended for any other purpose. So and these are not dangerous. So in the sense, we should provide the dangerous goods declaration as well, that these chemicals does not contain any hazardous component, and something like that. So dangerous goods declaration also plays a very pivotal role in the documentation part. So as a summary to this class, we have always come across the documentation process in land, air, sea, and combined mode, where we saw some airway bill, we saw some land related bills, and the sea related bills, and also the multimodal transport system, where we had seen something about when we combine two mode of transport, and the draft copy of that was shown to you, and other documents related to transport, where the customs document and something, and some documents related to the safety issues were also part of today's lecture. So as a reference, you can go through these three links to have more insight on this topic. So there are a few questions for you to answer as a part of this lecture. Number one question is, what are the different custom documents that are required while transporting goods or services from one place to another? Second question is all on what are the different documents required for land transport. So by land transport, you should say many things about the road transport documents and the railway transport documents. So both these are part of the land transport, and the different documents required for these two transport, that is land, that is road and railway, has to be answered here. And number third question is all about what are the different documents required for air transport. So thank you for your time and attention.